the crown, roll keys to bats. My team, my vision, placing bold bets. Strategies drawn with passion and might. Great iron tactics will overnight. Set my line up, it's time, gotta make that call. Dynasty dreams, I won't let them fall. Every yard, every play, it's all on me. The future's bright, champions you'll see. Hold the line and fight the sound. In Dynasty, we'll own this ground. Trading players, build it strong. In this league, we'll right the wrong.
Good day, guys. Episode 2, Part 2, Segue 2, whatever you want to call it. It is the Charge into Battle series, and today we are focusing on Dorn and Rob, a.k.a. the Megalodorns, and OG Swag. Those are the two teams that we are going to talk about today. If you didn't pay attention in Part 1, we're ranking them all. Now that the teams are basically set, we are ranking each and every one, and we're going to go through and see what I think of of how they're built, essentially. So, the first episode, I you know what, I'm really feeling good about this. I've edited it. It edited it.
What? What the
Skirt it.
You can do it!
I've edited it. I have edited it. And it is getting ready for upload. Oh, that was a tough sentence to say. So, I think it came out pretty clean. Definitely, it came out cleaner than the consciences of those people who sniped me during the auction and during the draft. So that's just the best way I could put that. So, with that said, we're gonna jump right in. We're not gonna take too long. We're gonna start off with OG Swag, Rob, the very first of the mock drafts before we did our rookie draft. He was on the show. Shout out to Rob. And now we are going to focus up on his team. All right, here we are with Rob's team on the docket. I'm just gonna get these ready. Okay, so we'll start off obviously with the quarterback position. I also just realized I didn't write any of these down, so we're going to write as we go so that I can have them for editing later. See, I could say the word there. That wasn't too bad. So at the running back position. Nope, not the running back. At the quarterback position. I wrote running back and then I said it. At the quarterback position, Jordan Love and Justin Herbert headline this group. I mean, Herbert was hurt last year for a good chunk of the latter half of the year and still put up 275 fantasy points. The offense is projected to be much different this year, so I do not know exactly where the rundown is for that group. I know Greg Roman has stepped in. He's much more running, tight end centric. I would conclude based on the lack of free agent attention that went there, and they do have some good youth in Lad McConkey. They weren't worried about replacing Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnston, so I would say that offense is still going to be looking a little bit less pass heavy, but I don't see that really killing Justin Herbert as far as his fantasy value. He should still be able to eclipse 300 points, which is, that's my bar for a quality, mind you, not explosive, not the greatest. But that is a quality quarterback. Jordan Love had 370 points. He got smashed in arbitration. I think it's a good quarterback room. Malik Willis being the backup picked him up off during the auction. Jameis Winston, I think, is a great dart throw. Jacoby Brissett will start for at least a couple weeks. barring any injury or barring him absolutely having one of the worst openings to a season, I think he's going to be there until probably at least September. Jameis Winston could get traded, right? And he could find a new home. He may be released and could sign later for $1. He's worth it. Jacoby Brissett at 4 is, again, a little interesting. Joe Flacco, another one who could not be on Indianapolis, be somewhere else when the injuries pop up. Like we said in the first video, so many quarterbacks, so many injuries. Chances are between those three, they're going to see multiple starts. Obviously, we know Brissett starting week 1 for the Patriots, week 2 probably, and probably week 3. I would give him at least September, like I said. So, very solid room. It's tough to kind of knock him too far from Colton or Whack. Whack is on a little bit of the lower side just because we don't know exactly what to expect. I am going to go with a 7.6. I'm going to put him just above Colton. Just because Jordan Love, Justin Herbert, I do think no, because you know what? He has a solid third, and Brissett won't be there at the middle of the year. I'm going to go the other side. I'll go 7.4. Reverting course. 7.4, because I do think that, comparatively speaking to Colton has at least between Nick Mullins and Sam Darnold, he at least has a third option for what would expect to be most of the year at this point. And I don't see that third option for Swag. So 7.4, just on the other side. And we'll move along to the running backs. Jonathan Brooks. Man.
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
It's completely true. I missed out on Jonathan Brooks. He will be injured for the first, on the IR for the first 4 weeks or so. Nick Chubb also IR for the first 4 weeks. And that is, I don't think Nick Chubb comes back so much, and it becomes this, he's definitely not going to be who we saw 2 years ago. He will probably come back and at least take over 50% of Cleveland's backfield, and I do think that that's more than enough. He's going to ramp up a little bit, so second half of the year will be when we see what he's got, and it is a contract year. So Cleveland doesn't look like they're in a rush to give him a contract. Austin Eckler, like I said when we did the video on Friday, that went out on Friday, that I thought that Austin Eckler was one of the more underrated signings out of the auction for $15. And I think he had 207 points in a horrible year last year. I think he could get into the upper 100s or even close to 200 again. And he's definitely half the cost or less than he was last year. So Ramondre, James Cook, the first two instant starters, Chuba right now, and then Jonathan Brooks for the third backfield. If Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler can contribute, especially towards the latter half of the year, this is a very solid running back room. I'm going to go 6'9" on this. I think that's just, and of course, I said 6'9", which means 69.
Nice.
So, moving along to the wide receivers. We have Devontae Adams, Keon Coleman, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith. Just off the rip, I like this wide receiver room. I'm not a fan of the Adams contract. I echoed that on Friday's video recapping the auction, but it's Devontae Adams. Like, what's his floor? A wide receiver 2, probably, right? Like, as far as scoring goes, he's not going to be the 2, but even with the decreased quarterback work and the probably bottom third offense that is the Raiders, I like, it's Devontae Adams, right? Like, he's going to get 8 to 10 to 12 targets a game. He's going to put up 12 to 15 fantasy points. On a bad game, he'll have 9. On an explosive game, he'll have 20. So, I can still see him in the low to mid 200s. Tyreek Hill, so long as he's healthy, this thumb issue is kind of lingering, it seems. I don't know if Miami's keeping it under wraps or if there's something else happening. But he's obviously he's a top 5 fantasy asset at the wide receiver position, hands down. Stephon Diggs, great piece for $17. I hope that kind of pays out. We don't really know what Houston's offense is going to look like, but we do know there's going to be a fair amount of passing. C.J. Stroud is still a very good quarterback. Devontae Smith, good 2 option in a 50-50 offense there. A little bit of running, a little bit of passing from Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia. I like the strength of this beyond the top 3 options. So you have Hill, you have probably Smith, and then I'm going to say Devontae. No, I'll say Diggs. I'll say Diggs as the third option. But then you have Keon Coleman, who should get a fair amount of targets. Is not the fastest prospect, but could have an opportunity just because of who's not there. I think that Buffalo is Dalton Kincaid's offense. Keon Coleman ran a 4.6, for his 40-yard dash. He has good hands, and he runs routes and he breaks fairly decently, but he'll win some contested balls, but he's not going to be a deep field threat. I think that's going to be Khalil Shakir. And then I think Keon Coleman will have more of a target presence than a yard presence, but that still adds PPR fantasy value here. I'm going to give this this is close. I'm going to give this a 7-9. The strength of depth here is impressive if there's injuries all over. I know there's a bunch of Q-tags here. Ricky Pearsall I am not a fan of entirely, but nobody knows, right? Like, I'm not a fan of now, but I've eaten my words several times before when they just go out, when wide receivers go out there and just pick up really well. We saw Puka Nacua do it last year. Like, who the hell knows, really? So I will take that. If I'm wrong, I'll take that all day. Devontae Walker, I was big on just because of the target share opportunity that Baltimore can provide. Doesn't mean they will. And then, of course, like I said, Diggs, Adams, Keon Coleman, Tyreek, and Devontae. I'm going to go 7.9 here. And actually, it could be a little higher if the Raiders' offense gets going. If Houston does provide Diggs with the same amount of targets or similar to what he had in Buffalo, but I think with Nico Collins and the other pieces there, it's going to be tough to do that. So I'll go 7.9. The tight end position, moving down. It's Dallas Goedert and then everyone else. And that's kind of the unfortunate thing. Goddard is a bottom end tier 2 tight end. That is, say that 5 times fast. Probably the fourth passing option now in Philadelphia. I think, I mean, maybe not. Jalen Hurts doesn't like to check down so much to the running back. Saquon's there, and I know he's worth some targets. You could see him within 5 or 10 targets of Goddard at the end of the year, or he could be way off. The flexibility there and the difference in outcomes for Goddard is very present. Indianapolis tight ends were a big avoid for many in the fantasy realm this offseason, so Colin Granson and Mo Alley Cox don't do much for me. Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, a lot of targets. Like I said when we were talking about Wax last video, Wacker's team, Warbortle, there's a lot of targets in Green Bay, and Josh Jacobs doesn't really help that. There's still Dobbs, there's Dontavian Wicks, there's these 2 tight ends. Now you have Josh Jacobs, there's Christian Watson. So I'm very murky on this tight end room. Goddard leading the way. It's not the most important thing. When you went into the free agency auction this year, I understand why some people would, with the change to tight end premium, I understand why a second tight end would not worry many. For me, this is going to be a 6.4 for me. 6.3. I'll go 6.4 just because it's the first thing that popped into my head, and we'll stick with that. And then defensively, we'll just name some standouts here. Brian Burns, Max Crosby, T.J. Edwards, C.J. Mosley, Fred Warner, Deron Payne, J.C. Horn, D.J. Reed. Safety isn't overwhelming. Jason Pinnock could have good impact. Buda Baker's been generally good. Nominally good. I like it. I'm not overwhelmed by it. And again, I have to kind of even the playing field. What do I know what to expect out of some of these guys? J.C. Horn was hurt last year. D.J. Reed did really well as at the cornerback position for the Jets. Leo Chanel should have a bigger role this year. T.J. Edwards will probably have a slightly smaller role, assuming that the Chicago front seven actually got better. We don't know what to expect from DeMar Van Overshown. He tore his ACL last year and never hit the field. Fred Warner is a stud. We know that. Brian Burns, Max Crosby. Oh, Nick Bosa. Let me just ignore Nick Bosa. $7 for Nick Bosa. Yeah, I like that group. That actually helps me out a lot with this defense. I'm going to go 7.3 for the defense. going to put that a little bit above. I was going to be down closer to 7 until I saw Nick Bosa, so that helps in and of itself. A lot of defensive end depth. These pieces, some of these pieces that are layered, when you get injuries later on in the season, they may become trade pieces on trade kickers, someone who you can throw in at the trade deadline to improve somewhere else on your offense. If you have, I mean, he's deep here at defensive end. Assuming Duron Payne can continue or get better in Washington. Nick Bosa is obviously a huge left end. Brian Burns has an opportunity to. I think he will be a little bit more effective. He's had a digression in some of his numbers, his advanced metrics for the last 3 years. I'm going to chalk that up a little bit to the Panthers' defense. And obviously he has a good pass win rate. He hasn't never left a season with less than 7.5 sacks. I'm just not huge on what the Giants' defense has as a whole. I know their front seven is pretty damn good, so it's tough to say. But I will go with the 7-3. I'll leave Fred Warner. I like a lot of these guys. I'll just put it that way. But I could believe that a couple of these pieces, if they all live up to their potential, they could be shipped off the deadline as trade pieces for another contending team. If he is not, and obviously he's not going to trade him if he's contending. So that's going to do it for team number 1. Next up, we are going to go to Horny Dorny. It is the Megalodorns next up. Oh, hey. Didn't see you there. Sure did. I hit the button. That's a lie. Here with Dorn's roster, just writing these down once again so that I am not way off in left field like I was. Just realized, just to cap off, I put it in the editing in between. I did not do an average for Rob, and I didn't announce it on the last one. So I am also at a 7.2 for Rob. And that is also in the 6 to 8 win for me. So a lot of people, like I said, I had the feeling that they were all going to be 6 to 8 wins this year. A lot of people in that realm, and here we are. So on to Dorn, and we will start off with his quarterback room: Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, Bryce Young, and then crickets. No, and Aaron Rodgers. Forgot about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is the most expensive, which is probably the best thing about this, because there's a lot of youth here. We don't know what we're going to get out of Daniels. I think Bryce Young takes a good step forward. He's not going to be the best in the league, but I have him as a top 14 quarterback this year, just because of what has happened with other quarterbacks under Brad Idzik. I've mentioned Brad Idzik a bunch of times. When I've looked at Bryce Young in preseason, he looks different, which is a big key to that belief as well. Will Levis has some good pass options. I think the best thing for Will Levis is that the offense can kind of be revamped now. And Jaden Daniels, of course, is a good 2-tier dual threat type quarterback. He can rush. I think he's going to be very helpful. But because of the youth, because we haven't seen Bryce Young in an actual game yet, because Will Levis is on a limited ceiling, I can't really go high on these guys at this moment. Similar to what we did with Wacker, I think we have to put a little bit of a cap on what I can give these guys, just because our track record is, for what we have, it's not amazing, and for what we have isn't great, and then what we are supposed to see hasn't been seen yet. So I'm going to go with a 6.4. I'm going to leave it there. I think this is another one just like Whackers that could be in the mid 7s. There could be another point here going on to this group, but there's good backups here. Aaron Rodgers, like who do you start? Aaron Rodgers is probably the first that comes to mind. Jaden Daniels, and then probably Will Levis until we see Bryce Young take that leap. And if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, you have 3 other options. So good insurance plan to pick up Aaron Rodgers. I'm gonna go with a 6.4. For Dorny Dorn, with room for growth. At the running back position, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, Kenneth Walker, 3 of the top 12 being in Derrick Henry. Swift, I don't know. Swift is probably going to be in more of a committee than the other two. Baltimore running backs have never had more. Only one running back in Baltimore has had more than 200 yards under Jim Harbaugh since 2018. And that was Gus Edwards. He had 203 snaps, and then so many other people have not had 150. I don't know if they're going to go nuts with Derrick Henry. We saw Derrick Henry take a little more of a backseat to Tyjae Spears at the end of last year. If you see a lot of that this year, you're going to have him. He'll probably be around the 200-yard mark or the 200 carry mark. But I don't see, that could limit his ceiling. He is expensive, but he's also a starter, which is important in this league. Kenneth Walker, similar, probably. We saw at the end of last year after he came back from injury, the last 5 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks. He was 55-45 with Zach Charbonnet, 60-40. This is a different offense that doesn't run the ball. They're supposed to pass catch a little bit more. It's supposed to be more in the passing game, more active. I'm tentative on Kenneth Walker as being a top 10 option, but I think it's completely there. He is extremely skilled. DeAndre Swift, like I said, in that committee that I expect, is still startable. All three are startable. It's just, are their upsides limited? I think they all have their different ways of having their upside limited. And for me, that kind of cramps this grade. Justice Hill as a handcuff. Zeke as just a insurance policy player that will probably, so long as he's healthy, be able to be started and have goal line work for the most part. There's one thing we can probably assume, it's that Dallas will get to the goal line. And then Rico Daddle as well, who one of either Zeke or him go up in projected productivity if the other is out. Khalil Herbert is backup for Swift. I like the depth here. It's just the ceilings for your startable options. And if it gets real murky with Swift and Herbert, or if it gets real murky in Dallas, or if there's an injury to Derrick Henry and you have to decide between Justice Hill and, Zeke or something like that, it does limit the upside of the group, similar as it does for the other running backs. This probably will still be the best grade I've given to a running back room. I think this is going to be like a 7-2. I'll go 7-3, just because it is Derrick Henry. He's going to have an effect on the run game, and Kenneth Walker has proved to be very effective even in limited snaps with Seattle. And you got to trust the player too over the situation in some of this. So I'm gonna go 7-4. I'll go 7-4, which is the best running back grade we have given so far. On to the wide receivers. This is going to be a real easy one for me, I think. Xavier Worthy was a great pickup at the end of the first round. CeeDee Lamb, Cooper Kupp, Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, and then a lot of depth. Cortland Sutton was a great insurance policy to pick up out of the auction. You have Jalen Polk, who should be actively involved enough to be valuable towards the middle or end of this year, and then going forward. Xavier Worthy, obviously, he got a lot of attention in preseason from the Chiefs offense in general. And then CeeDee Lamb, who's probably going to be the wide receiver 1. What's his floor? Wide receiver 3 on the year, like total? Like he's like the third best wide receiver is his floor, assuming health. I love how it says S next to CeeDee Lamb like he's suspended. That's hilarious. Unless he is suspended and I missed that. I've been recording for an hour and a half now. I like this group a whole truck ton. Let me tell you, instant starters, a lot of options in the back. Cooper Kupp is a reception. I assume he will be a reception-worthy wide receiver. Like he's going to be a top 15 wide receiver, probably top 20. Assuming again health. Cortland Sutton was a touchdown magnet. And then Jordan Addison, who. He could get in trouble this year. I don't think that matters much to the team as a whole. Deontay Johnson should hold 70 to 80 receptions on 120 targets from Carolina, from Bryce Young. He also completes the stack with Bryce Young. I'm going to go 8-3. 8.3 here on the wide receiver group. It is a smashing group. Another one that's probably top 3. Yeah, that sounds about right. Very, very strong group. Tight end position, Jake Ferguson. and then kind of everybody else. Hunter Henry, Chickaconquo, Will Dissly. Will Dissly is, I believe, third on the depth chart for the Chargers. Doesn't mean much because they get action like we just talked about at the beginning of this video with Rob's team and Justin Herbert. That I believe that the Chargers will use tight ends a little bit more. And, you get an injury or you have two tight end sets, and if you're going 13 personnel, you may end up finding some fun results for Will Dissly. Jake Ferguson in that offense, obviously the number one on here. $15 for Hunter Henry was higher than I would have paid at auction. I told Dorn this. My ceiling on him was like $10, $12. And then Chickaconquo, who's probably taken a hit now in his productivity, seeing as now there's Tyler Boyd, Calvin Ridley, and DeAndre Hopkins. And even really Tony Pollard as a pass-catching option as well for Tennessee. So riding basically Jake Ferguson, it's not as much of a one. It's not as much of a number one tight end as we saw with Colton's team, who has Sam Laporta. I'm gonna go with a 6.6 on the tight end room. We will let Jake Ferguson prove me wrong. But other than that, I'm not. Hunter Henry is going to be the third option at best in New England. And he's also getting to the point where injuries are starting to become a concern for him, as you can tell by the Q-Tech. And finally, we have the defense. Again, I'll point out some names that are just, they stand out to me. Trayvon Walker, DeMarcus Lawrence, Zaire Franklin, Pete Werner, Devin White, Trayvon Diggs, Minka Fitzpatrick, Jalen Petrie, just some of the names. Nothing like that's like the home run hitter like we just saw, home run hitters we saw on Rob's team. Devin White took a pay cut to go to Philadelphia, and I don't even think he's really going to be the number one as far as the linebackers go. He's definitely not going to be the play caller out of the back. I almost said the backfield. Out of the defense. Zaire Franklin, great player in Indianapolis, generally healthy, knock on wood. Pete Werner has been generally healthy, was good for my team for 2 years, and then last year took a little bit of a step back. I think he's a tackle magnet when he gets going. Jair Alexander, Trayvon Diggs, good 1-2 there, so supposing both of them stay healthy. Jair Alexander is in his early 30s. Trayvon Diggs coming off the ACL. And then Minka Fitzpatrick, who had a bliss season last year but was marred with injuries. Josh Metellus was a low-key gold mine last year for Minnesota. With no Lewis Sign, I imagine he will take a little bit more in that safety spot in Minnesota. And then Jalen Petrie down here at the bottom. Another team that will probably lead, which means it's going to be passing against Houston, which should increase, Petrie's output at the new scoring. I'm going to go – there isn't really any home run hitters, especially the defensive ends. I mean, Greg Rousseau is solid. Harold Landry, he had the most points out of these guys last year. I think DeMarcus Lawrence was hurt for a few weeks, though. Linebackers are meh, I would say. Meh to okay. And I'm going to go with a 6.8 here. I'm going to drop it just a hair. And once again, we will do some quick math on the 6.8 defense with the tight end position. So QB 6.4, running back 7.4, wide receiver 8.3, tight end 6.6, defense 6.8. I almost want to like really count the quarterback like. Hey, 6.4 is rough for me, but I do know that they are young, and Jaden Daniels is the only one who really can go out and like crazy change that number, but he probably will. I'm gonna go with a. Let's see, I have to average these. I can't go with anything. 6.4, 7.4. That averages to 6.9, 8.3 on the 2 times 7.4. Once again, I'm sorry I have to do this on camera, and I shouldn't have to talk while I'm doing it. 6.6. And a minor 6.8. Yeah, it's like a 6.9 for me for Dorn. This is the first one who probably won't be in the 6 to 8 wins because of the other 3 teams I've already done. And I believe he faces 2 of the 3 teams I've done twice. I am going to say this is a 5 to 7 win team. And it's basically a lot of wide receivers, right? Like we have the running back position that could be good. The running backs could come out and surprise me too, and I'm okay with that as a possibility. I just know the trends of those three teams, what it looks like. You know, you keep Khalil Shakir, you keep Roshan Johnson, you pick up DeAndre Swift. That looks like a committee to me. You know, the Ravens go out and they get Derrick Henry, but they don't really ever run anybody into the ground. Plus, you have a Russian quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So that I think that all kind of hurts Henry's upside, but he's startable in this league by a long shot. It all comes down to how that trades out. He's going to have to put the right people in the lineup. I think that's the biggest thing for the running back position. And the wide receivers, you know who you're starting, and they're studs. So that's the biggest one. Best wide receiver group we've talked about out of the 4 teams, in my opinion. But probably the second worst tight end group, and probably the worst defense altogether. Not to say it's bad again, but you know, the least efficient, least high ceiling. One of those is. So for me, I see 5 to 7 wins is very doable for Dorn. I do not think that's a condemnation on what he's done. I think that it's just the fact that other teams have improved just a little bit more than what Dorn has provided. With that being said, he has a much more balanced roster than last year. I think the running back position has gotten loads better for him. Despite how limited their ceiling might be, he has 3 people who, just like the wide receivers, 3 people who you know you can start, and if something goes wrong, you can pivot real easily. Quarterbacks are going to be seen. Longevity of Aaron Rodgers is a question. He's 40-something years old now, so that is my breakdown of Dorn and Rob's team. I will be back with episode 3 of the Charge into Battle series with 2 more teams that we will chat about. That is coming on Monday. So Monday we will have 2 more teams, and hopefully you guys are enjoying the series. Leave a comment, leave a like, tell me I'm stupid, tell me I'm smart, do whatever you want. Leave me some facts, defend your team, tell me I'm right about your team, tell me to piss every inch of the way off. I don't know. It's up to you. But I would like some feedback from especially the guys in the Fiddy True League. Leave the comments. We will get to all the remaining 6 teams in the next 3 videos. So for this episode, my name is Derek. You guys know how we end the show. Peace out.
Bob Barker reminding you, help control the pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.